Today I will be talking about the differences between police tactical units and military special operations operators training, right? The depth of their training and the scope of their training. Okay, so basically for police tactical units, they are very focused on CQB training, room entry training, riot police training, public order policing, crowd control. They are also focused in training on hostage rescue, the use of non-lethal weapons, firearms, equipment, and they are trained in arrest techniques as well, right? And for police tactical units, right, their operating environment is that of the home ground, right? So they are operating in their own territory, right, where they have control of the entire infrastructure. They have the manpower advantage, right? They have the advantage of the law on their side, in which they can enforce, right, against the target or the suspect. And then they have advantages of logistics as well, right? Because everything is in the home ground, right? Within their vicinity, right? Within the place that they control, right? Now, for military special operations operators, right, the operating environment is very much different, right? Unlike police tactical units, where they have greater odds against the suspect to achieve mission success, for military special operations operators, they have the odds against them to achieve mission success, right? So because they can be deployed from a small team, 1 to 12 person team in foreign hostile territory, right, where you are there, the 12 of you are just there against the entire country's police force, military force, militia force, right? So it requires a completely different psyche, a completely different psychological makeup and a breed of men to execute this kind of job as well, right? It's a much harder job, right? So military special operations operators are also trained in CQB, room entry, hostage rescue techniques. Basically everything that police tactical units are trained in, military special operations operators are also trained in, minus the riot policing. They don't do that. Crowd control, they also don't do that. In less lethal weapons usage, they don't focus on that as well. And on top of all that, military special operations operators are also trained to do war fighting skills, right? So war fighting skills can be field fire and movement, right? So take for example, suppressing a building with machine gun fire, right? Or rocket launcher fire, right? And then while another element do a flanking maneuver, right? So once they close in for the kill, clear the entire building through room entry and CQB, then they will plant explosive inside the building to destroy that building and then to leave the area, right? This is a typical example of a commando raid, right? Killing and destroying. So this is what military special operations operators are trained to do as well, right? On top of CQB, room entry and all that stuff. And even in comparison with police tactical units, CQB, military special operations operators are basically trained in every way of CQB that police tactical units are trained in. In addition, military special operations operators are trained to do also the more aggressive method, dynamic method than police tactical units, which I will talk about much later on, right? So military special operations operators are also trained in exfiltration, infiltration methods. This means that they are trained in HALO, and static line parachuting for air insertion. They also train in heliborne assaults and insertion. They are also trained in combat diving, entering by fast boats, entering by stealth rubber raiding crafts, entering by long distance swims, entering by specialized land vehicles through the borders, right? Entering by long distance marching, land infiltration, to enter covertly or clandestinely, also entering by underground tunnels, entering by clandestine or covert means. If these military special operations operators are attached to intelligence units for intelligence special operations, right? They might even learn and enter by criminal networks, smuggling networks, entering by forged papers and all that stuff, and they even bring in smuggled equipments and weapons, right? This is what they are trained in, right? So military special operations operators are also trained to use the firearms of the enemy forces, right? Whatever area of operations that they're operating in, they are expected to know the enemy's firearms as well, in the case that they have to use them, right, in the battlefield. Then military special operations operators are also trained in SERE, right? Survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, right? So what is this? Survival means to survive in the land that they are in, right? Example, they are being chased by enemy forces, enemy police, right? They must learn to evade the police of that country, that hostile country, right? They must learn to survive off the land there, right? So depending, military special operations operators are actually differentiated into different units that focus on different areas of operations. Desert, Arctic, mountain, maritime, right? Or jungle, right? So whatever unit that specialize in whatever environment they are trained to survive off that land, right? The food, the water, the shelter of that land, right? The terrain, the geography of that land, to be familiarized with it as well, right? And resistance, what is resistance? So in the event that they are caught by perhaps local law enforcement in the hostile area or local intelligence services, they are trained to use counter-interrogation techniques, right? Counter-interview techniques, right? So as not to give out important information or intelligence that can compromise national security to the enemy law enforcement or the enemy intelligence services, right? They are also, in worst case scenario, trained, to resist torture or undergo torture, and even under the conduct of torture, to not leak out compromising intelligence, right? And then escape. In the event that they are not caught, right? Let's say they successfully evade local law enforcement, they successfully survive, they are also trained to escape, to wait either for a follow-on force to exfiltrate them, or to escape by civilian means, right? Probably intelligence, special operations, will send in agents to recover them. Through military means, they would probably send in a helicopter or another smaller military special operations force to rescue this, let's say, stay behind operator, right? So military special operations are trained in all that as well, right? And they're also trained in a lot of long distance endurance activity, right? Marching for tens of km, swimming for tens of km, right? Just to infiltrate the target, or to exfiltrate from the target, right? So military special operations really requires a very rugged, tough, and harder mindset, right? It requires a total different breed of men to do this work, because you're going into a hostile foreign denied territory where the stakes are higher, right? The stakes are higher, the difficulty is much higher, and it's not as simple as the police tactical units where there's full control of that building, right? Negotiations fail. I'm a SWAT member. I go down, I go in with my team and I run a CQB, right? I take out the hostage, and then I pass it to other services. That's done for the day, right? All the tactical work is done, right? And then I return back to my station. For military special operations forces, it's much more harder and difficult than that, right? I can be on a ship, right, with my team, and I have to swim 10 km to shore. I go up to shore, okay, and then I set up a staging area, right? And then I have to covertly or clandestinely, make my way through the point where I want to do probably a hostage rescue or a raiding, right? And I can either walk there at night, right, which requires me to stay still inside hostile foreign denied territory in the day. So we have to camp there and wait there for hours, and then I'll make my movement at night. So movement at night can be up to 6 to 10, even more than that, depending on mission requirements, right? Once I reach there, after marching with my equipment, with my guys, with my weapons, right? After the swim, after the waiting, and after the marching, then I start my hostage rescue, or I start my raiding, right? And I start all my war fighting work, right? Where I do fire movement, where I do CQB, where I go in, either I take the hostage out, right? And then we bring him to the exfiltration point. And going to the exfiltration point is another mountain to climb altogether, another hurdle to climb altogether, because I either have to go through an alternate exfiltration route, but just for simplification, I'll use in this example, perhaps I need to walk all the way back to the same place where I came from, right? And I have to do it under the cover of darkness as well, because we are a small team operating in hostile denied territory, so we cannot get caught by the enemy, right? And we are with the hostage, if it is a hostage rescue mission, right? So I have to go back to the beach, and then we have to either wait for the speedboat from outside to come and pick us up, and then bring us to the mothership, and then we leave. Or if the hostage is an intelligence operative with background in swimming, we have another swimming gear. Perhaps we can swim out to sea and then get picked up by a rubber craft and then bring back to the mothership, something like that, right? This is an oversimplification, but just to give you understanding, right? So you can see there's a huge difference between military special operations operators work and police tactical unit, right? So you see videos, you see pictures of police units, tactical units doing room entry in CQB. Then you see videos and pictures of military special operations operators doing room entry in CQB. So you think like they are both the same, but it's far from the truth. They are extremely different, because there are many things that the government do not allow police tactical units to do in CQB and in room entry and stuff like that. The government do not sanction them to do, and which these methods are actually only sanctioned by the government, or the government only allow military special operations operators to do this type of CQB methods, this type of room entry methods, right? So they fall more along the lines of more violent, dynamic, and the more violent, dynamic, and faster type of room entries, right? That also involves a more focused usage on explosive, right? Blowing the walls, blowing the doors with high explosive and stuff like that. Faster entries, more aggressive entries, right? And these are not allowed, right, in police tactical units in some countries around the world, right? Which they only give to the military special operations operators too, right? And also from here, you can see why they are so different, right? In terms of their training and their depth and their scope, right? So do not be fooled, by athletics, right? Just because one unit has Hell Week, or has a difficult physical selection program, or a difficult athletic test that you must clear in order to join the unit and all that stuff, right? But that still does not make them a tougher or harder unit, right? Because what is tough and what is hard is determined by doctrine, right? Whether they allow you to develop that killer mindset, right? So we talk a bit about killer mindset. That is what really makes a unit hard, tough, right? So when we look at military special operations unit, right, the operators inside there, whether they know it or not, but unknowingly and accidentally, they do develop in long term that killer mindset, right? Because the doctrine of special operations requires a killer mindset, ultimately nurtures and hone a killer mindset, right? And the training environment, the culture, and all of that as well, right? So even if the operator who stays in that military special operations unit and culture for a long time, even if he don't want to develop that killer mindset, unknowingly, just by being a product of the environment, he will develop that killer mindset and be ingrained into him, right? So military special operations operators, because of all this, actually have a much more harder, tougher, and more rough kind of mindset and psychological makeup compared to police tactical unit members, right? Whereas when you look at police tactical unit members, right, even if they want to develop that killer mindset, they cannot, because police doctrine do not allow them to develop that. Police doctrine do not allow them to develop the killer mindset because police doctrine has a lot of controls, a lot of procedures that are even imposed upon their own police tactical members, right? Like earlier I mentioned how they are not allowed by the government that they work for to even employ some CQB methods or room entry methods, right? Which are reserved for military special operations operators, right? So because of the nature, of their work doctrinally, if police tactical unit members cannot accidentally or unknowingly develop that killer mindset, right? Because their work is very focused on control and procedures and ensuring that non-lethal force is of a priority first, right, before using lethal force. Because at the end of the day, their main priority is to bring the suspect to court and let the court process the suspect through the justice system, right? So that is basically a summary in a nutshell. So if you still find it hard to understand, basically in a nutshell, for a military special operations operator, in his mind, quote unquote, he has this thinking: I am now in a hostile territory, right? I must survive, I must fight and kill my way out, right? And achieve mission success and bring my team back to my home country, right? So you can see this is a man of war mindset, a war fighter mindset, right? To achieve mission success at any cost, right? For the nation, right? When you look at the police tactical unit member mindset, quote unquote, his mindset is, I'm in full control, right? This is my land, this is my territory. I have the manpower, I have the logistics, I have the entire force behind my back down here. This is our building, right? The law is on my side. We are going in and we are going to get that guy and bring him to court, right? My job is not to go in and kill him. My job is to go in, use non-lethal force and bring him to court and let the courts process him through the justice system. Only if things deteriorate to the point where we have to use lethal force will I use lethal force, right? So you can see it's a typical city guard mindset, city watch mindset, right? So that's why there's a vast difference between these two units, right? So when we even look at police tactical units in which they are specialized in, which is hostage rescue and CQB and room entry and all that stuff, right? Even then, in their area of specialization, they are not the masters of all that, right? Like I say, some methods are not allowed for them to use by the government, right? So in military special operations, there is several units where they are reserved to do domestic counter-terrorism, right? Domestic hostage rescue. So these units actually basically take over when police SWAT units cannot handle the scene, right? Or when it requires an even greater escalation of the use of force, right? Or military type style of force, right? So take for example bank robbers, right? There's a bank robbery, right? Police SWAT are deployed and they are trusted to solve that incident. But if let's say there is a terrorist or a bunch of terrorists at simultaneous locations around, right? That is when police units are moved out and military domestic hostage rescue teams, counter-terrorism teams will do all the CQB work, room entry work, and hostage rescue work in a domestic capacity, right? And the methods that they are allowed to use are really much more rough, much more harder, and basically, I cannot say too much, but basically it resembles a military style operation. So the masters of hostage rescue work, room entry and CQB really still falls under military special operations operators, especially their teams where they are trusted to do domestic hostage rescue work, counter-terrorism work, right? So police tactical units specialize in those work, but they are not the masters of those work. The masters of those work still belongs to the military special operations operators team, right? So in a nutshell, we can see I've highlighted to you guys basically the vast difference between police tactical units and military special operations units, right? So at the end of the day, organizations, should be accurate in representing themselves, labeling themselves to the public as well, right? So take it for example, if you are a riot police unit, institutionally you should label yourself to the public as a riot police unit, right? Rather than to label yourself as special operations, because this creates a practical problem, right? Because it confuses the general public and policymakers as well. People find that it could be a misrepresentation of the public portrayal of your duties, right? When people look at you, they might think, hey, you are just a riot police. Why are you calling yourself special operations, right? So it doesn't sync up. It doesn't match up, to the expectation, especially now, policymakers and the general public are well versed and well aware of the difference between military units and police units. So they really do see the difference or the mislabeling quite obviously, right? So long term, if a riot police unit, take for example, misrepresent themselves to the public, it could actually, at the start, it could be confusing, right? And confusion ultimately breeds mistrust, right? And mistrust would lead to loss of respect. So it's better to have a unit that is labeled accurately, especially if it is involved in public duties, right? Because the public will see them, the public will constantly be assessing them, right? And if you label your unit accurately, people can understand, that okay, this unit is here for riot policing, right? And they are doing riot policing. So there is a matchup of expectation and public portrayal, and the trust level will increase ultimately, right? And there will be no issues, right? So in this video, I have concluded just an introduction of police tactical units and military special operations units, the differences in their training and in their depth and their scope of training, right? And we can see that CQB and room entry can be something that both units are trained in, right? But in terms of execution, one unit execution of it will be 10 times harder, right, than a unit in which they are operating home ground, right? So seeing videos and pictures, or marketing and advertising videos of room entry and CQB will never give you a more accurate portrayal of the unit, right? You have to look at their doctrine, right? Once you understand their doctrine, you would understand how little they are and how dangerous they really are, or how non-lethal they are and how not so dangerous they actually are.